Hey everyone, this is Alan Schimmel. You're watching TechStrong TV, and today is Thursday, May 28th. Welcome to the show. You know, it's amazing how quick the weeks just run one into the next. This was a short week because of Memorial Day, and here we are on Thursday. Tomorrow's Friday, and we wrap another week. We've got a good week, a good day of interviews for you today. Some good stuff. Let me run it by you quickly, what we have on store. First of all, I'm joined by Anthony Bettini, a CTO at White Hat Security. And he's going to, White Hat is probably the preeminent or one of the preeminent AppSec SaaS-based testing platforms out there. But Anthony's going to talk to us a little bit about what's going on in the world with COVID and how it's affecting AppSec and everything else. Good conversation with him. Then I'm also happy to have back on the show my friend Sachin Agarwal. Sachin is the CEO founder of a new company called Accurix. And Accurix just released a new survey on DevSecOps and developer views on security. After that, I'll be coming back with the news headlines for today. And then after that, we're going to turn things over to Charlene O'Hanlon, our managing editor. And Charlene has Stefan Manley, chief technologist for Druver on. They're going to be talking about data privacy considerations during COVID and beyond. And then, of course, we head over to the analyst corner with Mitchell Ashley. Mitchell has some great advice and interviews today. So sounds like another good show. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with our first guest.
Tech is strong. We may be working from home, but tech goes on. Tech will continue to collaborate. Tech will continue to communicate. Tech is strong. Join us for TechStrong Con, June 4th, 12 hours strong, TechStrong. Featuring John Bacha-Galupe Willis, Shannon Leitz, William Hurley, Jasmine James, Kat Swatell, Cornelia Davis, James Wickett, Courtney Kistler, Damon Edwards. Live Q&A with speakers, exhibit halls, and more. Free, but register before spots fill at techstrongcon.com.
All righty. Our first guest today is White Hat CTO Anthony Bettini. If you watch TechStrong TV, you know we interviewed Craig Hinckley, White Hat CEO, I guess about 10 days ago. Here's a follow-up with CTO Anthony Bettini. Let's go to our interview.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this interview. Our guest for TechStrong TV right now is Anthony Bettini. He's the CTO at White Hat Security. Anthony, welcome to TechStrong TV.
Oh, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
It's our pleasure. Anthony, actually, speaking of pleasure, we had the pleasure of interviewing Craig Hinckley, CEO of White Hat. I think it was a week or two ago from Vancouver. And yeah, we talked a little about the Gartner Magic Quadrant and just kind of what's going on with White Hat. But I asked you on today because I wanted to talk a little bit about, maybe it's more of a general security tool question than just pure AppSec, but that is around all these contact tracing apps that we're starting to see kind of, and it's not just a US thing, I should mention, it's worldwide, right? But, Google and Apple probably got the most press. They announced a partnership, which is, or a cooperation, I wouldn't call it a partnership, a cooperation where we can use virtually every smartphone, whether it's Android or iOS, to perform some contact tracing, or it'll note when it gets near other phones and stuff like that. And it sounds great, right? Because everything we hear, Anthony, is you got to test, and then when you find people positive, you want to quarantine them, and then you got to do your contact tracing, right, to close that circle around whoever they may have come in contact with to limit the exposure of this virus.
Right.
And so, using technology to help with contact tracing, what could go wrong, right? What's bad? But of course, things could go wrong and things could be bad. Tell us.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, as you mentioned, one part of the solution certainly is contact tracing. So I certainly think people have the right intention, the right motivations. We're trying to either end the pandemic or at least lower the risk of it significantly. So I certainly think contact tracing is part of the solution. And before the apps were starting to be used, contact tracing primarily meant phone calls, picking up the phone and calling people. And so I certainly think it makes sense that, hey, there's technology out there that can help with this. Let's try putting it to use and trying to get technology and technology companies to kind of improve the situation and speed it up. So I think the intentions are certainly good, and knock on wood, optimistically, hopefully it's all going to work out. I think some of the challenges so far, though, would be, say, in the Google Apple relationship you had mentioned, they seem to be building APIs and possibly SDKs, but building the apps themselves up to governments. In some cases, that could be national governments. In some cases, it could be state or local governments. I think that could be itself a challenge, because usually when you're building an app, you're actually assembling it, not necessarily coding it from scratch. If they provide an SDK, that's just one component. If you imagine a state or a local government or a small country out there, perhaps they could be using other SDKs, either that do location tracking or providing some functionality that includes functionality they didn't expect. So I think if you leave, much like the voting challenge, if you leave the technology and the security and the systems all up to kind of state and local governments or governments around the world, you could end up with a very disjointed solution. And some of those may be safe and easy to use, and some of them, maybe they're harder to use and get less adoption just for that reason. And some of them perhaps have security or privacy issues.
Absolutely. And, whether or not you are a U.S. citizen and you're a fan of, the government, state, federal, or whatever, or you're Edward Snowden living in Moscow, right? The potential for abuse is there. And I think the potential, iPhones and Android phones don't just work in the U.S. They work all over the world, whether it's China or Europe or Singapore or Australia. Between those two platforms, it's probably 90 plus, high 90% coverage of worldwide phones. So, if you're starting to now talk about an SDK publicly available for people to build apps around this, I mean, you could very quickly see where this could go down a bad path.
Yeah, I think it's a non-trivial problem. Certainly people have the best intentions, but even you mentioned the Europe example. Some countries in Europe seem to be heading in the way of adopting the Google Apple kind of platform approach to this. Some are just building their own apps that have nothing to do with Google and Apple. And in Europe, it's fragmented at a country level, and so but geographically kind of small in the grand scheme of things. So you could cross a border and then suddenly your app is no longer relevant. And so, for people who live near a border or who commute over a border, it could be challenging. Maybe they have to use two different apps and maybe it doesn't really work so well.
Absolutely. I think there's another angle to this. I'm sure you've thought about it, but so now you've got states, local authorities, nation states, what have you, developing applications, and with the best of intentions, as you say, for contact tracing. But maybe they're not great at building secure applications, right? And though they may not be doing anything untoward, with the information gathered, the applications themselves are not secure, and so they wind up, having malware or security issues that give, bad actors access to the data that these apps are gathering. What do we do about that?
Normally, when you see enterprises develop mobile applications, normally what's happening is they're applying their application security program to all the software they're developing, such as mobile applications. And so they're typically using third-party mobile application security testing solutions to actually vet what's actually in the code, what does it do, and is it safe for their customers to use? Does it contain security risks or vulnerabilities? Does it have privacy risks associated with it? And one of the reasons they do that, they may subcontract out some of the development. They may use open source code. So all sorts of reasons they would want to vet the final mobile app as it's built, if nothing else from a supply chain perspective. But I think when you talk about state and local governments or some of the smaller countries around the world, they certainly don't have mature application security testing programs, and they may not realize that they should actually be vetting the mobile application security, like the final app itself, especially considering the third-party code that's likely included in it.
Yep, no doubt about it. So it begs the question, Anthony. Someone's watching this right now and thinking to themselves, I want to participate in contact tracing. I'd like to know if someone I came in contact with is sick, so I know to quarantine. I want to protect my loved ones. But man, I don't want to become a victim either.
Right.
What's your advice?
I think, unfortunately, in the world we live in, a lot of companies have data on us all, and I think we're all victims fairly regularly. So
yeah.
I think that's just part of being alive and being connected to technology at this point. I wish it wasn't that way, but that seems to be the way it's going. Certainly it would be better if you have some type of security awareness training for yourself, your family. If you work in a place of employment, hopefully that type of thing is happening. And there are, either from phone carriers or from companies, applications, like mobile application security software that may help on a handset level. But generally speaking, it's a problem associated with the supply chain on the side of the people building the apps. So, it's certainly a challenging one.
Yeah. Let's talk about the supply chain, these people building the apps. Obviously, you could tell them to use White Hat, but beyond just telling them that, Anthony, what should they really, what should they be on the lookout for in terms of using these SDKs? Or if they're not using the Google, Apple stuff, right? They're developing from scratch.
I would say, in the case of the Google, Apple one, I think that seems to be headed in a way that it will use Bluetooth and won't rely on personal data or location tracking. And I think what's implied by all of that too is that Google and Apple will vet the apps that use those APIs and will ensure that they kind of don't go beyond what's expected. I think probably the highest risk would be countries or governments around the world that are trying to just build their own, because normally what ends up happening when you build your own app is, maybe you use an SDK to monitor for crashes, or maybe you use an SDK to check for, are people clicking this button or that button? Like, how's the app actually getting used? And when you start adding more and more of these SDKs and more of these third-party solutions and software packages into your app, as you're kind of assembling the software, it's hard to get a sense of, where does the data go and who is it being used by? And so they should have a step at the end where they check all of that. They check the finished product before releasing it to the App Store and seeing consumers actually go use it. So whether it's White Hat or similar such mobile application security testing vendor, they should use something to check what is all that code doing? Because it probably does a lot more, especially in the case of third-party code. It probably does a lot more than than the one thing that they used it for.
I don't disagree with that. Anthony, we just have a moment or two left. Jumping off contact tracing for a moment. Overall, the nice thing about White Hat is it's a SaaS-based testing system. So you have great insight into how many people are testing how many apps and stuff. I'm curious if you're seeing more app testing taking place now, less app testing, less app testing taking place, about the same. I'm wondering how, pace of development, how are people, developing as much as they did before, or testing as much as they did?
Yeah, I think we've seen a lot of changes on that front, which is really interesting. I think is that when these mobile platforms first started getting popular, we actually saw an explosion in apps. More and more apps. It felt like every week there's hundreds or thousands of new ones. Now I think we actually see less apps, but more security testing. So actually, when there was an explosion in apps, people actually didn't recognize the need for security testing as much as they should. Maybe there's large enterprises out there that were early adopters and saw the need to protect consumers in other businesses. But I think the development of new apps far outpaced the security. And now I think what we see is actually a lot more disposable apps, or like one-time use apps, or in the days pre-COVID, it used to be, we'd all fly to conferences, and those conferences would have an app. And so we see a lot more things like that. But now we're seeing a lot more security as part of the app development process.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, almost certainly. Yeah.
Absolutely. Anyway, Anthony, we're about out of time. A, I want to thank you for joining us on TechStrong TV. B, thanks to White Hat, man. You guys, we need to make sure we're putting secure applications out there with everyone working remote. I've had a few instances where I've had to call customer support or something to a bank or to various internet provider. It's impossible, right? So an ounce of prevention is truly worth a pound of cure here. And good stuff. Keep up the great work. Say hello to all our friends at White Hat for us.
Excellent. Thanks for having me.
All right. Anthony Bettini, CTO, White Hat Security, here on TechStrong TV. This is Alan Schimmel, and we'll be right back with our next guest.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
Hey, everyone. Back here in the studio. It was a couple weeks ago, maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, we covered the launch of a new company coming out of stealth called Accurix, and the CEO founder was Sachin Agarwal. The Accurix folks recently released a survey they had done around DevSecOps and developer views on security. And I had a chance to sit down again with Sachin and discuss the results of the survey and what it may mean for developers and security folks out there. I think you'll find it interesting. Here's my conversation with Sachin Agarwal, CEO of Accurix.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hi, everyone. Next guest. Our next guest is actually a gentleman who's already been on TechStrong TV once. They had just announced they're coming out of stealth and money raise. It's Sachin Agarwal, and I always mispronounce your first name, Sachin. I apologize. How do you
No, that was
pronounce
good.
it?
That was good. That was good.
That was good. Okay, I'm getting better. Come back on a few more times. We'll get it right. Anyway, Sachin, welcome. Thanks for being on TechStrong TV with me.
Likewise, Alan, it's always a pleasure to be with you.
Alrighty. So you guys recently announced or released a survey that you did around DevSecOps.
Yes, you're right. We just released a research report. We had been working on a research report for almost a few months now, and we compiled all our results, and we just thought it'll be good for the community to know what we are finding.
So, okay, there you go. Let's talk about it then. What did you find?
So as you remember, Alan, accuracy is all about three things, right? Full stack. So basically, we are studying for immutable security, if you recall from our last discussions. So it's full stack, DevOps lifecycle, which is code to cloud, and then no drift, right? Once you have your your code on the one side and cloud on the other side, make sure there's no drift. So three things. So our findings were all around those areas, just to figure out what our customers or the large enterprises or even small enterprises facing. So we just did we had a fairly good methodology to get to our results. And we summarized a report into 5 big findings. And I'll just summarize it and we can go deeper into each one of those. So the first one was that customers are not addressing, or the enterprises are not addressing their issues in the production runtime. All the issues that they find in the production runtime, the solution isn't really working because they tend to solve only 4% of the identified violations in the runtime. And we'll get to the reasons why that's so. It's not surprising, given, of course, the cost of remediation and time to get to those violations are take time. The second big one is all the layers today in the cloud stack are being targeted. It's no more just the S3 bucket or the security groups being open to internet. It's none of those today, right? I think those still exist and constitute a big part. But all your layers, your Kubernetes, your Docker containers, the Kingpin, the malware that we saw, right? I mean, pretty much your Dockers and everything are getting exposed today, right? And the third one is there is a trend now for the customers to use the infrastructure as code to streamline some of these processes. So we have also picked up a number. How many customers, how many enterprises are the number of customers we talk to, how many of them are using infrastructure as code to make the configuration changes in the code, in the cloud. The problem is not many of them are actually incorporating or implementing security and taking advantage of security early in the process. So we have that stat 6. And the last one being that people are still drifted from their posture in the cloud from the original intent or the original single source of truth that was established at the code level. So these were the 5 big groups that we categorized our report into, and then we basically did some stats, did some comparisons, had our own research data, and then combined that into a report.
So let me just lay a little foundation for our audience here. How many respondents did the survey have? Was it a decent amount or?
Yeah, so basically it was, I started this journey on Accurix last year in February, and this is my 5th startup. We talked about it last time.
Right.
So this time I went around pretty much on the street to interview the CISOs, to see CIOs, just to see what's keeping them up, as they think of cloud journey, what's the top problem that they're having. So I think met around little less than 100, I would like to say 80 to 90 such executives. They then had me talk to some of their teams. So fairly large number across the region, across East Coast, West Coast, industry sectors. We collected data from our initial POC. So we have real data from our initial deployments. We had, actually, believe it or not, we had a very good traction from our launch from 3 weeks back. We had, very large downloads of a freemium version, and it's on SaaS platforms. So of course, we de-identify the data, but we try to process what's really people are finding and how they're using the software. So the data that we collected from that source, plus the general public data that we could get our hands onto. So it was a combination of multiple sources.
Excellent. Now, so you categorize kind of the 5 buckets, if you will, right? Where you source stuff. What like the biggest surprise to you? Anything that really jumped out and said, man, I didn't expect that?
So the biggest surprise, and I think this was a surprise even to the enterprises that we spoke to or did a quick POC with, right, is the 90% drift from code to cloud. Most customers that we've gone to, they're saying, oh, our production systems are hardened. Nobody touches it once it's provisioned. People still misusing their privileges. The old habits die hard. I mean, people have been using shell scripts and using consoles to basically write something on the cloud and provision the resources. And it could be adding a new resource. It could be deleting a resource. It could be moving a resource from one subnet to another subnet. It could be changing the configuration within a security group, changing the setup block, whatever those are, right? So I think 90% of the environments that we scanned through a software were drifted. So that number is staggeringly high. I was expecting it to be 50, 60%.
So I interviewed another company, and I don't remember the name off the top of my head right now, but they called that shadow code,
Yes.
right? So after code's been checked in, it's been theoretically deployed, right? And then someone goes back and says, wait a second, this isn't what was here, right? This is different. And, and you would think in a world where we spend so much time and effort and process around change management and stuff like that, but yet these changes are happening in an undocumented way. And as a security person, Sachin, right, that drives you crazy because you don't know what you got there. Right? And the whole point of trying to secure this before you send it up to the cloud, before we deploy it, is that it was checked, it's okay, it's good to go. Now I find out after the fact it was changed and something bad happened, it's enough to make you nuts.
So,
it keeps you up at night.
Challenge. Yeah, so challenge, Alan, there is, so let's first understand why people are doing it, right? So I think we're following up with we'll be following up with the fall edition of a report where we'll actually categorize top 3 reasons why people still do those things. We'll also be categorizing and getting into details of what are the top violations, top things that we find when we are finding such drifts. But right now, just to give you a high level understanding, when we look at the environments, I think it's a fire drill. It could be an urgent situation that a site reliability engineer or a DevOps person says, okay, I have this issue today. I got to fix it. I will break the glass. I don't think he really even realizes that he's breaking the glass. He's thinking that I'm making a small, benign, very, very valid change, but he doesn't realize that change causes a drift in their security posture. It creates, like, he may be solving one small problem by making the change, but then it changes the whole dynamic of how the cloud was even provisioned in the first place. And even if it's a good change and it does not change the dynamics of the security posture of your cloud, even then, if you're going to use the old code back to spin the new version of the cloud, you're going to introduce the same bad configuration back again into your cloud. So you lost a good effort that you made on your running cloud. And if you have not tied it back and closed the trust or the immutability that we talk about back with the code, then you have introduced the risk again into your cloud. So I think these are many of those. Plus, we have also seen, we have tried to did some pen testing, introduce some attack signatures, and saying, okay, if the attacker got his hands onto certain privileges, and we have seen identity compromises are always there in cloud, they can, when they start making lateral movements, they also make config changes. And those are difficult to tap if you're just doing runtime monitoring, right? So you really need to go back to your code line or baseline and monitor those drifts. So I think it's good if it is it's a good change, then you should true up your code. If it's a bad change, then you should be able to roll back using your baseline to the code to the cloud that you wanted. So either which way, I think you need to be in a state where it's fully compliant.
I don't disagree with you at all. So now I got 2 points of verification on this, and then my head's already rocketing what we could do here with this. What about, so what effect has like the current COVID and everyone working remote? Do you think this has any effect in kind of the results you're seeing?
So I think COVID has done 2 things. One is it's preparing people for the new normal, right? And I've actually said that cloud is becoming part of the essential infrastructure. And the reason I say essential because it's like an essential services, right? So most
Front line.
enterprises have, yeah. So enterprises realize that for them to stay agile, for them to stay, I think they need to re-architect. They need to rethink about how they're going to deploy their own applications and serve their own customers. And obviously, cloud actually solves some of that problem. The elasticity, the benefit that cloud gives. So I'm definitely seeing an upswing. When we talk to the customers, they're all talking about large migrations, large deployments of cloud. Second thing that I'm seeing is because people are working remote, security, and we were just talking offline about it, Alan, just a few minutes back, people actually do believe that they need to now think about security and allowing the access of their enterprise systems to these developers who are working remote much early on in the process. So actually, that's the reason I think we saw a little bit more download of our freemium version of our from a launch 3 weeks back than we would have normally seen. Because in a normal enterprise, a developer goes, he's spending his time with his friends, drinking coffee, and does 5 hours of coding, maybe 10 hours of coding, comes back home or whatever, right? Now he's sitting at home, really nobody to talk to other than the Zoom calls and the Blue Jeans calls, whatever they're using, and they are willing to try. I think the freemium version helps them to incorporate that into their process. So I think COVID-19 presents certain opportunities for the organizations to rethink how they would like to be in the new normal.
Excellent. Got another question for you, if you don't mind, Sachin. So I saw another survey recently, and granted, the survey was by a vendor who has a point of view and an angle to play. I didn't agree with it, but nevertheless, their survey indicated that a lot of people who are moving payload to the cloud, moving code to the cloud, are then within a couple of months, 6 months or whatever, moving it back down off the cloud to private data center, private cloud, etc. Because it's not working for them. Security was cited as a huge concern, right? But also just the whole idea of shadow code and being people having access to that, not outsiders having access, mind you, their own team having access, right, to the cloud infrastructure, etc. I'm wondering, are you seeing? That's kind of the first I heard of it. Sort of like I moved to the cloud, I didn't like what I saw, and I moved back.
So I think it could be, and again, I do not know what their data size was and how many customers or enterprises they talked to. I've actually only found one customer. I think it was the wrong use of application for cloud. So they actually did not architect it to be cloud native. I think they were just trying to virtualize their the big application, like a big monolithic application, and thought they could run in the cloud. And when they started their invoices from the cloud provider go up, they brought it down to their on-prem. That was the only incident that I saw. My view is that, in fact, I am seeing cloud journey is on the rise. In fact, I have a completely contrary view to what this company found, because every customer, every enterprise, every person I talk to, they are just betting on the cloud. Now, good news is that now people have a viable options. So people are not just relying on Amazon Web Services, but Azure is picking up, Google Cloud Platform is picking up. So, I mean, people have no choices, which they didn't probably have 3 years back. So I think it's actually growing in adoption. So I would not agree with that finding, other than maybe there are a few cases where the customers or enterprises chose wrong applications to put on the cloud, or they didn't architect it to be cloud native. So that could be the reason.
Yeah, no, there's always those are all good reasons, right? I think people who don't do their homework and just rush into things sometimes make mistakes, but then when they make mistakes, they compound the mistake by saying, they throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak, right? Everything gets thrown out. And let's just pull it back, right? And we'll run it here in the closet or whatever. And that's not always the solution either. Sachin, here's and this is something I dealt with when I was starting up my companies. How do you take this data that you found here, internalize it, and say, okay, here's what we're going to do as a company to help this situation, based upon these data points, based upon this analysis and research. Here's what we're going to do, to help these people.
Yeah, so basically, like I said, we divided the data into 5 buckets, right? Let's say, I'll just probably pick top 3 here, just to address your question here. So people are not, the solutions that are working in production aren't getting addressed, right? So we see still high profile breaches in the cloud because people see 2,000 violations on their cloud deployments, but they do not address it. They think it's a noise. Well, may not be noise. There may be actual violations, but they don't get to it, right? My view is that by implementing and educating and telling the customer that it is very easy to integrate security early on in the process, it is frictionless. I'm expecting our results would show that when we get to the cloud, we have probably addressed 80-90% of those issues. So I think the first way this data helps the customers to know. And again, if I can even help, I was talking to one of the customers, I won't name them here. They said, even if your software can help me reduce the incidents or the noise that I see on my runtime, that's a value to me because I'm paying that vendor by alerts, right? By alerts that I get on runtime. So now if you're going to help me reduce those alerts, in a way, that's a cost saving, and I can easily justify even in this COVID-19 situation, using the software. And, and so that's why this whole novel coronavirus era actually presents those opportunities for people to try. So I think one way that we're using this data is to help customers, educate them, look, address your issues early on. The second data that we are using here is to tell customers, how do you reduce your attack surface early on into the process? Because now once you have a complex cloud architecture, built with your network storage compute, your Kubernetes, your service mesh, all those layers, how do you find out who talks to whom when, how they get provisioned? And how do you reduce your attack surface by using some algorithms much early on into the process? And the third one really is you should not have any drift. I mean, even if this is, I'm not asking you to not change the habits of your DevOps or your site reliability engineers. They will do what they're doing, but get a mechanism to know right away that they have drifted from their source of truth. So use that data right away to get your immutability back, get your trust back into the organization so that you can rely on a process that you intended to operate with.
Agreed. Excellent advice. I want to get off if you don't mind, I'm just going to move off of the survey and that stuff. So you guys launched 2-3 weeks ago. You said you had some great traction, people interest and stuff like that. What's the new normal for you all now, Sachin? How are you? What do you? It's hard. Right. It's a little different than you probably were planning a year ago.
Yeah, it's very hard. Obviously, we didn't. If someone asked us, okay, how do you see your future after a year of your startup? I would have never guessed this is my future, staying at home with not meeting my team. And the fun of startup, as you know, Alan, and you've been through this journey, is interacting with people on a live conversation basis. I mean, we can innovate, we can fight, and sometimes when you speak on the phone with your fellow founder or your team, I think you can get misunderstood, right? Because they're not seeing your expression, and I think that's normal human behavior. So the new normal, is that, okay, we of course insist that, everyone needs to be on a video call, right? So that it's not a phone call. We need to make sure that we are collaborating more than we ever did in the past, which means even if you have a small issue, don't hold it back for the next scheduled meeting. Just bring it up so that we resolve it right then. So the new normal would constitute with, better collaboration, more trust in the team, trusting them with work even more than you ever did before, because you're not seeing them face to face, and then try to build that culture right in the organization, which then instills that innovation, instills the culture of encouragement and confidence and trust. I think if we build our foundation on the trust, that I trust you and I know that what you're doing is right, I think organizations in the new normal will actually see the new light.
Excellent, man. Excellent. Hey, Sachin, we're about out of time here. I want to thank you for coming back on to TechStrong TV with us. I do appreciate it. I wish you know what? Wait, before, where can people go get the information on the survey and the report?
So it's go to our website, www.accurix.com.
That's ACCURIX, yeah?
No. ACCURIC.
CS, right, Accurix. That's how I remember.
Go to
Yeah,
accurix.com. There's a link there for download the report. Download the report, read it. I think it's really interesting findings. It's neutral. We're not pitching there as Accurix. It's a vendor agnostic report. And I will, like I said, we're going to please read this report. We're going to follow up with a new report in the next 3 months with detailed findings across these items. Right? We'll tell you exactly what the top 3 things in each of these areas. So if you have the context of this report, next report will become easier for you to read.
excellent. Hey, man, best of luck to you. Keep us posted. We'll be in touch soon, okay, Sachin?
Thanks, Alan.
Yeah.
You have a good one as well. Stay
Thank
safe.
you. All right, Sachin Agarwal, CEO Accurix, here on TechStrong TV. We'll be right back with our next guest. Hey, everyone. All right, back here at the studio, and it's now time for our news for today, Thursday. Couple of headlines as usual from Security Boulevard, DevOps.com, Container Journal. Not exhaustive. You should really check the sites out. But up on the Boulevard today, we have planning a secure transition from working at home back to the office. I know many people are and many organizations are in the planning stages of moving at least some people from home. It'll be interesting to see. Did they do it in stages? Is it a transition where you start working a couple days in the office? Do you jump right back in where you were? I know here for us at Media Ops, we're probably never going to go back to the office the way it was before, where everyone was here. But this is a good article. It gives you a good list on planning a secure transition in terms of doing that. Also up on Security Boulevard, we have the importance of the importance of protecting the right data. With so much data being stored right now, is a big data problem. Not all data is created equal, and not all data is equally as valuable or as important. So the importance of putting your resources in protecting the right data is more important than ever. Have a look at the article, and I think you'll learn more. Up on Container Journal, we have Docker extends Microsoft's alliance to Azure. DockerCon is going on. It's actually the biggest DockerCon ever. It's virtual. And they've made a couple of big announcements. We, of course, had Docker and SNCC on, I guess it was earlier this week, and or maybe it was late last week. And then today, the announcement with a Microsoft alliance for Azure. We also have LNF adds paths to build CNs. And then another Docker story, how Docker and Kubernetes work together. I think that, is really important and vital to the success ultimately of Docker. Up on DevOps.com, we have ZenHub updates project management app for DevOps. Folks at ZenHub always up to good stuff. Micro Focus revamps Load Runner, and Micro Focus, of course, is the developer, owner of now the old HPE, or a lot of the old HPE portfolio, as well as their own previous. And, Load Runner was ready for an upgrade, and it looks like Micro Focus has delivered. And then our friends at Circle CI have been making a lot of news lately. We have an article on them. Circle CI updates their platform. They've raised a lot of money. They're getting ready to do battle in this end-to-end DevOps space. And, you'd expect them to get their product cutting edge. And then that's what this latest update is. So congratulations to the Circle CI folks. Have a look at the article. That's going to do it for the news today. I wanted to now turn things over to our managing editor, Charlene O'Hanlon. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, Charlene is interviewing Stephen Manley, Chief Technologist at Druva, on data privacy considerations during COVID and beyond. So, take it away, Charlene.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to TechStrong TV. I am Charlene O'Hanlon, Managing Editor at Media Ops, and I'm here now with Stephen Manley, who is the Chief Technologist at Drupa. How are you, Stephen? Thanks for joining me.
Oh, thanks. It's been a good day so far. The sun is shining, and my garbage got picked up. So what more can I ask for?
I was going to say, sometimes that's really all you need, especially these days, huh? Kind of crazy. I'm happy if I can even remember what day it is. So,
well, it's important for garbage pickup day. That's the key thing. It's like,
you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. So just mark a big W on your garbage can, and you're all set, I guess.
Exactly.
So listen, I wanted to thank you first of all for joining me here on TechStrong TV, and I'm interested in having a conversation with you about the topic of data privacy during this pandemic, because obviously we are data privacy is obviously critical any time of the year, but especially during these trying times that we're going through now. It's something that is very, very, very critical, yet I don't think a lot of companies are really, they weren't prepared for a lot of what they've had to do. So data privacy was kind of maybe lower on the list than it normally would be. So what are you hearing out in the field, and what are your customers telling you now about, how they're approaching data privacy, or what have you seen?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like you said, the pandemic and the response to the pandemic has created, I think, almost maybe it's everything in our life, but it's created these really, sort of two extreme camps on what we should be doing right now. The way it seems to in every facet of society these days. So I get one camp that says, look, I've got customers that are and employees that are more focused on privacy than ever, because because they're and especially this has to do with they're looking forward to the future of, all right, so let's say now we're going to go back to work at some point. And all this talk about tracing applications and testing, and if you're going to go into work, am I going to get a heat scan? Am I, anyone that goes into that office, what sorts of tracking and what sorts of operations do you do against them? And that data's got to be stored somewhere. And given the history of organizations collecting data and just us trusting them to do the right thing, there's a large swath of the community that says no, right? Yes, we want to get back to work. Yes, we want the world to open up, but we're very uncomfortable putting even more personal data in the hands of organizations that have not necessarily established that we should trust them. Sure. And then you get the other half, right? The other extreme, which says, I've got people working from home, and that's different than it's ever been. And we do need to start opening up. And yes, we will have to have things like contact tracing. And will we have all those privacy, sort of parameters set in place, and we're going to have everything perfect? No, but do you really want to wait until all that's done? And so these two groups are sort of getting farther and farther apart from each other, because, again, as often happens in these conversations, they start sort of almost attributing motives to both sides that are not really what it is, right? Well, of course you want more data because you're going to monetize it. And like, that's not what we said. Of course you're wearing a tinfoil hat. Well, no, we're not. Yeah. And so there's a lot of tension right now as we talk to both inside companies and outside about where's a middle ground that we can get that's going to get things done.
Yeah, it's really interesting how divisive data privacy can be among the populations, and you're absolutely right. I mean, folks either it seems like we're at two extremes right now when it comes to data privacy. You're either a conspiracy theorist, or you don't care about your liberties, or it's like
exactly.
We're all just trying to get along here.
Right. Yeah.
So what about though when we're talking about data that's kind of been in the ether, if you will, because of the pandemic, the data that traditionally has been kind of locked down in the corporate networks now has to be accessible to employees wherever they are. And so do you think companies have kind of maybe taken steps maybe even since the pandemic started, to kind of make that information more accessible, but still adhere to a lot of the, the data privacy, the compliance standards, things like that?
Yeah, it's actually been interesting. I think this is an area where standards have and not everybody loves standards, but I think standards have been a bit of a godsend, because when you have these two sides of the debate, and it can be very easy to get into, analysis paralysis, and we're just not going to do anything.
Right.
Everyone looks and says, well, okay, let's just go for let's go for compliance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Could we do more? Yes. And someday maybe we will. But compliance, that's a good, clean step. And so what we see a lot of people doing is, and like you said, it's data on remote laptops. It's more things are going over messaging apps like Slack. And they're looking and they're saying, okay, how could we make that compliant? And usually that tends to revolve around, can I monitor the data where it is? And then, can I analyze it? Can I search? Can I look for personal information? Those sorts of things there. And if I can do that, then I don't have to sort of feel like I've lost control of my data and I've lost control of my infrastructure. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of the path I think we've seen a lot of people set, which is, this is a good, clean step. It's a very clear step. We can set our organization to go work on it. And again, someday maybe we'll do more, but let's get this baseline in place first.
So, but we're more than 2 months into this work from home situation. And I think, when a lot of corporations kind of sent their employees home, they were kind of playing catch up, if you will, when it comes to data privacy. So, I mean, are we too late? Have we kind of already let the cat out of the bag, so to speak?
Well, what we see a lot of people doing is they are saying, all right, so the data's gone remote. How do I jump on that? And and for a lot of people, the answer has been, well, all right, step one, again, let's solve the process, right? I want centralized control. I want to set a clear task for everybody to understand. And then the second one is they say, let's look at cloud, right? Because I'm not going to be able to roll in a whole new solution in the data center. And frankly, that wasn't going to connect with the data where it's living anyway. And so there are a lot of organizations that were already actually looking at how to sort of deal with distributed data. I mean, IoT has been explosive growth and across industries. Mm-hmm. And so what they look at is they say, okay, I've got privacy regulations, plus I have data locality regulations. So I can't always send stuff back to my data center anyway, because if I've got data in Canada, not all of that can come to the US, or I have data in, and so what we've seen a lot of people do is say, I'm going to centralize the process, but I'm going to then use cloud as a way to sort of make a copy of that data that's remote. And then from there, I can do sort of look at the metadata, analyze what's going on in each of those remote sites, but still manage that centrally. And so we see a lot of people saying what we were already kind of dipping a toe in the water on in terms of using cloud for managing my endpoints and my IoT devices. Mm-hmm. It's okay, now we're doing it for our SaaS applications and our laptops, and we're just making it work at bigger scale. So I think a lot of people were caught flat-footed, but as they examined, they actually said, "Oh, we had little bits that were already happening," and as people have said, cloud sort of just accelerated a lot of these transformation activity, or COVID accelerated these cloud transformations, and we see the same thing happening on the privacy side.
Oh, okay. All right. So what do we, when we're thinking about compliance, regulatory compliance like GDPR, CCPA, and all those other acronyms, it seems like those are so strict. And organizations, at least when GDPR was enacted, we were seeing fines of millions of dollars that, that organizations were facing because they weren't adhering to those compliance. Do you think that in the wake of what's happening, the world's on fire, basically? So, do you think that organizations, the state of California and the EU, or do you think maybe they're going to kind of maybe turn a little blind eye toward the compliance regulations in light of this? Or do you think that maybe those are even going to be changing in light of this?
So, it's interesting the way we see companies reacting right now, and I should probably say, as Dhruv, obviously, we do quite a bit with people around cloud data protection and searching for PII. So this is sort of where we play. So, disclaimer out there. But what we see is companies saying, they certainly don't want to count on, sort of enforcement organizations becoming more lenient, because until something like that gets passed, you certainly don't want to bet on it, and you don't want to. And for a lot of them, the fines are actually less scary than the bad press. Yeah, because while there are $1 million fines, a lot of the fines have been smaller, but they brand you in a way that your customers look and go, all right, I'm a little bit worried about that. And I think as regulatory organizations, as we look at some of what's happening on the legal side, they've got to be careful about sort of loosening or giving too much sort of flexibility on the enforcement. Because again, the whole point of GDPR is establishing that level of trust between consumer and business. And if the consumers start to see that GDPR, CCPA, or some of the other new regulations coming in other states in the US, if they don't have teeth, then the regulation sort of loses its value because that trust erodes. And so what we see out of a lot of regulators is saying, no, we really, we've got to stay sort of on top of the regulation to keep to keep the value of it, to keep that trust in place. And so for now, I think both sides are operating as if it's business as normal in terms of this is going to be enforced, and there are paths to go get it done. So guess what? You should go get this done.
That makes sense. That makes sense. I think we're going to have to take a wait and see attitude when it comes to what ultimately happens, especially if we move into this quote unquote new normal. I mean, obviously, I think everybody agrees that we're never going back to the way things were. So, with that in mind, though, eventually offices are going to reopen, and employees are going to, at least some of them, are going to start going back into the office, at least for part-time. So what about the data then? I mean, what's going to change once that does happen and the offices open back up and employees are filtering back in?
Yeah. So what we've seen in terms of the trends that our customers are expecting is, because they are going to have to be gathering a little bit more health data, because you will have to be scanning people and tracing. And it's not just your employees, right? It's your employees. If a customer comes on site, if some outside, someone drops off, right? I mean, these are all things that have to be done. And what we're already seeing is people testing their infrastructure, saying, could I handle more of these right to access, right to be forgotten types of requests? So there's been a real focus on, can I automate this? One of the things that I think we saw, especially in response to GDPR, is some of the larger organizations, take your Salesforces, for example, someone really big. They've done a fabulous job of fully automating their sort of all these access requests so that it isn't a huge burden on their IT team. I think you're going to see more organizations having to invest in that way, because just their own employees are going to, I think, be issuing a lot more of these requests. And that's one that I think a lot of organizations, they got so focused on the consumer side. I think trust between company and employee is going to be one of the big things as we come back into work. Managing liability, but also just managing the faith we have in each other. And I think you're going to see a lot of people, even more than has happened in the past, sort of testing the privacy rules of their own company for themselves as employees. So that's one to watch out for, I think.
Interesting times we live in, huh?
Well, it's, and again, like you said at the beginning, it's, this is our data. It's all the information about us. And as I think all of us want to make sure that, we'll be treated fairly, we'll be treated reasonably by whomever it is. And I think I think organizations that live up to that trust, I think they're going to build stronger relationships with employees. They'll build stronger relationships with their customers. And I think privacy will start to be a differentiator, not just a checkbox to be ticked.
Excellent. Well, Stephen, thanks so much for sharing your input and your advice and your insight. Always most appreciated. Good stuff. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Great. Thank you. And please stick around. We've got lots more TechStrong TV coming up, so please stay tuned.
Disruption is occurring across every aspect of IT. Open source, cloud services, DevOps, and cloud-native software architectures are democratizing IT and radically transforming how business is done. The old ways of creating software and doing IT are being replaced with agile, flexible, faster, and cheaper methods, benefiting vendors and users alike. Accelerated Strategies Group is out to democratize access of industry expertise and knowledge. We use our expertise and experience to offer insightful, intelligent, useful information in a variety of formats relevant to the IT community, digital events, videos, reports, assessments, workshops, and implementation projects with tech vendors, IT organizations, and business leaders. We widely and openly share our work products, often for free. Analyst reports these days aren't worth more than a graph or chart that tells a story or illustrates a market trend. We work with developers, DevOps teams, cloud architects, security engineers, and transformation leaders most every day, creating and implementing transformational strategies and technologies. We're not just thinkers, we're also doers.
Thanks, Charlene. Good stuff there with Stephen. Up next, it's time for Mitch in the Analyst Corner. Mitchell Ashley, CEO, co-founder at Accelerated Strategies Group, with today's Analyst Corner.
Hi, it's Mitch Ashley. Taking a break here from my normal Accelerated Strategies work to talk to you about an upcoming virtual conference, TechStrong Con. I hope you join me there. We as a technical community certainly bring a lot of value to our businesses, development of our own careers, and fulfillment of what we love to do. But we can band together and achieve even more, and that's the idea behind TechStrong Con. There is a fabulous lineup of speakers. I couldn't even name all the folks that I'm anxious to listen to and hear their talks. I'm going to be fortunate enough to be joining as a speaker on TechStrong Con, talking about DevOps as a strategy and what the next normal are going to look like. Because I have the feeling there's going to be quite a few impacts and changes that will have longevity into and past the current pandemic. Please join us June 4th on TechStrong Con. You can go to techstrongcon.com to register. There's also some interesting giveaways, so please check it out. Thanks for coming.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Welcome back to TechStrong TV. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, managing editor at Media Ops, having so many great conversations on the TechStrong TV broadcast streaming. Just loving what I'm doing here. And I'm about to have a really, really interesting conversation, I can tell already, about the future of remote working and AI ops. And I am here with Madhu Sudhakar, who is the CEO of Icira. Sorry, I mispronounced that, Icira. So thank you for taking a few minutes and talking with me today. I really do appreciate it.
Charlene, first of all, thank you. Hope you are very safe and your family and all your viewers are safe. I mean, that's the #1 business. And I want to give out a shout out to all the first responders and everybody who's helping us, from nurses, doctors, to people who are helping us getting food to our homes. So thanks to everybody who's helping in this difficult time. So as well, speaking with me is a great pleasure to talk to you. Thank you.
Oh, great. Thank you very much. And yes, echoing your sentiments, shout out to all of the first responders and those who are helping us in this time of need. It's truly, truly new times. I don't think we've, any of us have ever experienced anything like this before. So unknown territory, but hopefully we'll all make it through to the other side safely.
Yep,
But
well
let's
said.
talk about AI ops and the future of remote working, because when I think about AI ops, so many different things come to mind. Artificial intelligence, just in general, is just one of those topics that really does kind of get the mind spinning if you think about it long enough. But what are some of the applications for AI ops when we're talking about remote work?
Very good. So let me start in the two areas that are most common that I'm hearing from some of the, I'm spending a lot of time with hospitals, companies or healthcare providers and the government agencies, right? So we actually launched a program offering 60 to 90 day program to help some of these first responders and offering our services for free. Because even though I'm a small startup, each of us can do something if there's a way to help. So we got a lot of feedback. The areas that people need, I think no company has designed to go 100% remote, right? We didn't wake up saying that all our employees are going to be working. So in remote working environment, the number one thing that I talk to customers is the customer support, customer service, employees support. This we call help desk and service desk. That area is the most that I see in remote working that can use some solutions. What people are asking is, on any channel, I want a self-service, like I want an Instagram or I want a WhatsApp like a device where I can contact Charlene or I contact my IT admin at any point in the time. I don't need to wait to talk to a human being. If Charlene has a problem, can she be unblocked? If she's doing a video recording and she ran into some technical difficulties, how can you unblock her so that she can do her job better and timely? So that area of the whole area, what I call the automation for customer support help desk, is the one that I'm hearing in the area of AI. So can AI solution provide as a way to unblock and automate, right? The second is what you kind of alluded, which is in the beginning, which is AI ops side. Because what happened is in the world of post COVID environment right now we are living in, it's not only remote working. Most of the services are going to cloud and SaaS services. To me, the AI ops is one of those things where instead of having people monitor, right, and sitting in front of a monitor and looking for what application or service is going to go down, that is very old. You can't do that anymore. What you want is a proactive notification. You want it like a weather prediction, right? It's almost like, hey, you want to know what is tomorrow weather going to be. So a good AI solution in the market, that what people are asking is, I want an outage prediction. I want to know when a major incident is going to happen to me. Like you are getting into a studio, you're able to record. Do you think your day will be the same tomorrow or something massive going to happen? How can you resolve that? Giving you any early warning is what people are asking for. First of all, there is not enough resources available. Even if you have resources, they're all working for remote. So having an AI solution in this remote working is almost becoming from a nice to have to must.
Interesting. So do you think that the needs have changed with the remote work environments as far as what organizations need to be able to not just service their clients and their employees, but run their operations more efficiently?
Absolutely. I think this is going to be the new normal. It's not only change for now. I think this is going to accelerate how people need to think running their IT operation, their cloud operation, their DevOps. My philosophy is in the previous normal, maybe you had 100 people doing the DevOps. You don't need 100 tuners. You need maybe 1 or 2 manual tuners. You need the system and the tool to do the job, right? And those tuners cannot even do it. The complexities have gone up. See, again, the AIOps complexity is more not just from remote working, what's happening. Once you start moving to cloud, microservices, and with the containers, you cannot solve this with humans. The complexity is so much. You want the tool to tell you where there could be a potential problem. It may be a little bit false positive, but it might as well identify the root cause and the area where the problem is going to happen and give you all the logic and the reasoning behind it. You as a master can still come as say, hey, I don't agree with it. I agree with it, but at least you know what to look for, right? If I come and say, hey, you may have a recording problem today on your Zoom, you would pay attention to that, make sure it's working before you start the session. You see what I'm saying? That is what people are asking for. Give me a proactive notification. Give me a predictive AIOps, which will tell you what application services will be impacting my employees, my critical needs, so that I can manage my time better.
What about for a distributed workforce that is maybe on different networks or not all connected via, say, a VPN, but which would kind of be an impossibility these days anyway. But
Right.
you're working in an environment that's not a connected environment per se in the traditional sense. So, how can this technology work in such a distributed environment?
Very good question. I very good. So I think what happened if you look at AOps, people thought through in a centralized environment like a data center where you have a VPN, your storage, compute services are running in one place. That's where the centralization came in. Mm-hmm. With the cloud and SaaS, most companies are fully distributed, Charlene, as you're saying, right? Mm-hmm. You may consume Salesforce, you may be using Adobe, you may be using Workday, you may be using Twilio as a service. They're all coming from different forms. So to run your company, you may be using services across the world, highly distributed. Mm-hmm. But if you can take all those properties and figure out from those applications where the outages are going to be there, and that's where the AOps really can help in. Because in a centralized world, doing your log analysis, your IT operations, or the traditional IT and cloud DevOps is much easier. Doing this across companies, not only they're distributed, they're all supported by different vendors. So taking third-party vendor alerts and event information and correlating them, and that's where actually we coined the word I call it domain agnostic or domain independent AOps. Because there are vendors who will tell you, I also do AOps I can do better network monitoring, I can do better alert management, like companies like PagerDuty or companies like Dynatrace or companies like Splunk. But they're trying to do that job better with their AOps. I call them domain specific. What I'm looking for at Isra is we create something called domain agnostic. To your point, it could be distributed. It's purely mathematics and AI at its core. You give me all the alerts and events across multiple distributed systems. I'm going to predict what outages and what incidents you may have, Charlene. And there'll be sometimes true positives, there'll be false positives, but you'll get a predictive, proactive service across your environment.
Okay. One of the things that I hear about a lot when it comes to IT operations and alerting is the concept of alert fatigue, and you've alluded to it once or twice that everyone's there, you might get a false positive here and there, but is this going to kind of contribute to that load of alert fatigue that a lot of folks are already dealing with their numerous reporting and alerting systems?
Very good question. Again, this is my favorite topic. You're right on all the good questions. So I think I feel again, this is my view of the world. I don't think alerts is a way to go. To your point, not only alert fatigue comes in. There's not enough, the complexity of number of alerts has gone up. There's not enough human beings to analyze all the alerts, right? With the advent of 5G, with the advent of all the logging and alerts, every system is generating so many alerts per second. There's not enough resources you can throw to analyze all the alerts. And even if you throw that many alerts to analyze that alerts, and out of that, there'll be so many false positives. Not only it's alert fatigue comes in, people will be turned off and looking at the alerts data. That's why I think all the solution that I went with alert analysis, alert aggregation, alert reduction, they will be thrown out of the door. I don't think people should do that. I think people should give, to your point, from the distributed application, give us actual alert. You should straight away move into what I call the weather prediction service or earthquake prediction. Ideally, AOps should be compared to what we do today. Like when you turn on a TV, you get a weather prediction or you get an earthquake prediction. Nobody in AOps has actually thought about that. That's what I'm putting the stake in the ground and say, look, whether I do it or somebody else does it, you want AOps to predict outages proactively, predict incidents that are going to happen. Don't tell me alerts and say these many alerts, aggregation and anomalies, etc. Mm-hmm. That's all the broth. Come to the eventual conclusion. Give me the outcomes that I can act on it. Right. So I think this alert aggregation stage is going to be skipped, and it's going to get be absorbed as a feature into event management and operation solutions. What people will focus is the outcomes.
Okay, great. That makes total sense. So taking a look at remote working and kind of the future of it, in the short term after the pandemic subsides, if you will, although I don't think we're ever actually going to get completely beyond it. Do you foresee a change in the way organizations structure maybe their employees and in their operations to accommodate a more remote environment? And do you think that they'll also maybe look to adopt tools that foster that remote work environment, such as the AI and other ways to kind of help at least increase collaboration, communication, and customer service, if you will?
I think so. I think there'll be a new normal again. Nobody has a full oracle here. My prediction and my 2 cents is what's going to happen is a customer service, as we know, is going to fundamentally will change. It won't be call center operated. People won't call. They won't talk to live human beings as much. It'll be still through web interfaces. It'll be through Slack, all the collaboration apps, Microsoft Teams. It's through email. They want to be able to say on any device at any time, I should be able to reach and get my services done. So customer service, as you know, will fundamentally change going forward. It's going to be a new normal that's going to hit. And in that, there are 2 things will happen. Not only customer service will evolve from just the information to what I call automation. So if Charlene has a request saying that I want to download Microsoft Office, or Charlene says I want access to Adobe Photoshop, you should be able to do that without talking to a human being. So what I call the services, the actions and workflow and services will be automated with AI. So that is going to happen as a part of customer service. So all the procurement to unblocking you, whatever, and you don't need to wait for that. Then what will happen is with the AI ops, if you can do the weather prediction and if you can predict what outages and incident, people will push that to saying that, can you now notify Charlene that she is going to have a problem, right? You should be, everything is probability in nature. Imagine if you get a notice saying that your video recording today will have 80% outage. You may do different things. You may schedule different interviews today. You may push out some other interviews out for tomorrow, right? So I think this AOps is not only there, it will be pushed out to the end users and consumers in a proactive notification. Like we all get a text message today, right? So I think it will be connected or AOps all the way to notification services. So people are informed of there. So that at the end of the day, you empower people. I call this consumerization of AOps, right? AOps should not be now tied to some 2 or 3 DevOps leaders say and keep it in the back office that CIOs are doing there. Right. CIOs have to leverage this to entire business and their consumers and their employees.
Interesting. So what do you think then developers have to think about when they are working on their code and developing applications, keeping AI in mind? Are they going to start incorporating more AI into the applications that they create? And is that a hardship, if you will, or is that going to be something that's extremely difficult for them to achieve?
No, very good question. I think this is, again, even more futuristic thing that you're asking about. I think it's already people are doing that. I call this change management. So from DevOps, now the developers. I think developers should incorporate in their source code. Today, what happens is anytime you make a change, you heard this famous saying, I only made 1 line change, but that won't impact. But that 1 line will going to bring out your entire application, right? So I think developer changes in the change manager will be incorporated to the point that will be logged, because that information will be helpful for AOps solution. So the change management to all the developer changes, the more you log, the more you talk, Charlene, I can understand your behavior. If you don't speak much, I can't judge you. Are you a good person? So I think the developers, whether they log it or not, it should become fundamental to the point, logging their events, logging their messages, generating alerts has to become so core. I need the ground truth. So our developers have to give me what is a good state, what's a bad state. For me to predict, I have to learn from the data, right? So people will be asked to design their solution to describe what should be a good message, what should be a bad message, when should I predict the bad messages. I think the more developers starts putting that's important. Even the cybersecurity world. See, where I take AOps is, AOps today, you and me talked only in the context of running business. AOps is important in cybersecurity world. Nobody even talked about AOps for cyber, which is like, if you are going to get a phishing attack, you're going to get a browser hack, or you have an antivirus problem, I should be able to predict based on your existing AOps. This is where what used to be called the SIM, that companies like Splunk, etc. have done. AOps and SIM will merge together to point. I should be able to predict through AOps when you'll have a security outage. When you have a security, that requires all this new development and changes.
That's That's kind of almost mind blowing if you think about the ramifications of that. But I think you're right. I think AI ops is truly going to change the way organizations approach certain tasks, especially in the development environment. So, thank you very much, Madhu, for your insight and your expertise. Love to have more conversations with you about this in the future.
Thank you, Charlene. It's a pleasure speaking with you, and stay safe.
Yes,
you
you
and
too.
all your viewers.
You as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, stay tuned. There's going to be more TechStrong TV coming up, so please stick around.
With the COVID-19 pandemic, it is important to protect yourself and others from spreading the virus. Prevention and personal safety is key. Here are the top ways you can protect yourself and others. Wash your hands often with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. Avoid touching your face. Practice social distancing and avoid high-risk potential people. If you are showing symptoms, stay at home. If you must go out, wear a face mask. Always cover coughs and sneezes with a tissue or use the inside of your elbow. Clean and sanitize frequently touched surfaces daily. Together, we can prevent this pandemic.
All right. Thanks very much, Mike. Hey, guys, before we go, I forgot to mention at the beginning of the show, TechStrong Con coming up June 4th is going to be a great event. We've got 50 speakers lined up, all kinds of just greatness. But we're running a challenge, the TechStrong Con Challenge, and I'm going to challenge you. If you will take a picture of your work from home setup, wherever it is you're working now, your computer, your laptops, your whatever, post it on LinkedIn, hashtag TechStrongCon. And if you do that, we will make a donation to a COVID charity for every single person who posts. But also, if you do that, register for TechStrongCon and attend some sessions on June 4th, and you can pick which ones you like. They're all free. You will be eligible to win one of two prizes, an iPad Pro, the new iPad Pro, or a really hot little drone that we're giving away. So again, that's TechStrongCon. You can find out more information about this at TechStrongCon.com. I think there might even be information on all of the Media Ops site as well. So do check that out. And we are looking forward to making a significant donation to COVID charities from this. Anyway, that's going to wrap today's show. This is Alan Schimmel for TechStrong TV. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow. Stay safe, stay well, stay strong. TechStrong.